Hey there, I'm the Mad Catster, and I'm glad to see you here. Many of you may be aware that H3 Podcast and Ethan Klein have been bombarded by lawsuits from Ryan Kavanaugh and Triller, especially a copyright infringement lawsuit that's been talked about a lot recently. Well, there have been some recent developments legally that I think is going to give Ethan Klein the upper hand, and I think he's going to win this lawsuit. I'll explain to you why, so let's jump into it. First, I want to apologize for my voice. I've been really sick the last 2 weeks, and I've been exasperated because I have 3 videos I wanted to put up, but I haven't been able to record, so I hope you'll bear with me. I'm going to tell you that I'm rocking the Lindsay Lohan vibe today. But I'll try to get through this as best I can. I want to explain to you because this is really important. You've heard a lot of chatter probably recently on YouTube. There's been this bombardment of these false copyright infringement claims against all different kinds of YouTubers. These things are just horrible. And these people who are doing this could actually be sued civilly by the people they've targeted with these false claims. And I really wish YouTube would get its act together and revise its copyright strike policy and make it harder for people to abuse the system. Because I'm going to explain to you in a second, you shouldn't have to defend yourself against using what we call fair use when you do a broadcast or a video like I'm doing right now, where I use clips from different things. It's rooted in the law. It's been upheld by all the different courts at different levels. It's not a defense to a copyright claim. It's a right in terms of the law that people have gotten the wrong opinion. They think that, oh, if I get a copyright strike, my defense is it was fair use. No, the law says you have a right to fair use. They should not be making false copyright claims, and it really pisses me off. But anyway, stay tuned to the end. I'm going to give you another kitty introduction. Anyways, so I want to talk to you about it. So Def Noodles and Phil DeFranco have covered it. This particular Triller lawsuit against Ethan Klein H3.
Triller is suing us for copyright infringement.
It's a copyright infringement, but there was also a focus on fair use because they were trying also to claim that Ethan Klein's fair use of a clip of this Jake Paul fight was somehow copyright infringement. But in reality, it's not. And in fact, there's been some recent chatter from Triller's lawyers where they've backed away from the whole fair use aspect of this lawsuit because I know they know it's a dog. Pardon my French. They know it's a dog. They're never going to win on that, on the fair use. They're not going to win. Hands down, case closed, okay? Next, the thing that we're going to get to is the copyright infringement claim. Now, there was a broadcast of a Jake Paul fight back in the spring, and Triller had the pay-per-view rights to it, and they broadcast it, and it was like $49.95. And there, of course, there were pirated copies, and Ethan Klein had uploaded a copy of the video as what's called an unlisted video, which means nobody can see it when it's uploaded on YouTube unless you have the direct URL or link to the video. It's not in your playlist of video. So Ethan Klein uploaded that. And the reason that H3 and Ethan Klein uploaded this particular fight, and I think it was pretty much the whole fight, was so they could pick a clip to use in their podcast, and Ethan Klein could give commentary about part of the fight. And that's exactly what he did.
No, I don't really. I was a little baffled by the by all the MMA people fans coming after you because everything that you said ended up being 100%
I was
right.
like, look, he's out of shape.
Yeah.
He's retired.
He showed a clip of the fight on the H3 podcast, gave some commentary, fair use, no issues. The problem was in the browser window that Ethan Klein had open, you could see the URL to the unlisted video. And so now this is Triller saying this, about 60 people were able to see that URL, and they were smart enough to know that if they went there, they'd see the whole video of the fight. And that's what they did. So 60 people went and viewed this fight. It was not intentional on Ethan Klein's part, and I'm not defending him for any reason other than he's not in the wrong. As a lawyer, I get really angry with these frivolous lawsuits of people like Ryan Kavanaugh, who's going around using his might and his muscle and his legal team to basically harass and try to bankrupt people with frivolous lawsuits that they know they're not going to win. But they do it because they want to crush their opponents, and that's not what the system was invented for. I'm sorry, okay? But Ethan Klein is in luck because something just happened a couple of weeks ago that's going to completely implode Brian Kavanaugh's case and Triller's case, and the copyright infringement is going to go away, and Triller's going to look like the biggest laughing stock because they pursued this stupid, ridiculous lawsuit. The reason they're going to lose is because Brian Kavanaugh and Triller also brought a lawsuit against another YouTuber. Second lawsuit that Triller filed was against a YouTuber named Matthew Space, and he's a smaller channel like me, and he intentionally uploaded a bootleg copy of the whole Jake Paul Ben Askren fight back in the spring. People went to his channel, they watched the fight. So Matthew Space did infringe the copyright of Triller, and he put up on his channel for people to watch this Jake Paul Ben Askren fight, and I think it was in its entirety. And so there were over 300 people that went to view this broadcast, and yeah, 300. And Triller admits this. There were only 300 people that watched this fight on Matthew Space's channel, and Triller confirms this in their own filings with the court. So there's no question it was 300. However, Triller was still seeking maximum damages for copyright infringement and some other issues. They were seeking $150,000 for the copyright infringement claim, and they were seeking $10,000 for a Communications Act claim, plus $11,190 in costs, which is like legal fees and court fees. But if you look at it in terms of wider audience, 300 people is still not really that many. And mind you, on H3, there was only 65 people who viewed the fight. So this is what happened. And I've told you this before. Matthew Space, for some God only knows reason, didn't file an answer to the complaint. And that's very, very bad. And I'll tell you again, if you're ever sued, you make sure you file an answer, or the court's going to do what's called a default judgment. And that's what happened in this case with Matthew Space. Matthew Space didn't file an answer. He didn't show up to court or his attorney. So the court got a request from Triller to enter a default judgment, which was appropriate. And the court said, given that Matthew Space didn't file an answer, given that he's not here, you get a default judgment. And so I know you're thinking, oh my God, Matthew Space was very lucky because he got a very fair judge in this instance. And the judge did something that's really amazed me in what I've seen, and I think is amazing because I think this is exactly the right thing. So even though Matthew Space didn't file an answer and didn't show up to court, the judge took a look at Triller's request for damages and he said, no, too much. For the relatively small number of people that viewed this video, you're not entitled to $150,000 plus $10,000 plus costs. He said, I'm going to say your number, 300 unique viewers, the court's going to agree with that since you're saying that's what it was. And it looks like from the evidence, that's what it was. I'm going to take those 300 people and the court's going to multiply it by the $49.95 that the pay-per-view cost was for each of those 300 people. And so it ended up being like only $15,000. And that's all Triller and Ryan Kavanaugh got. And that's a win for Matthew Space, no matter what Triller might say about a default judgment. Okay? Now, the reason this is important is because the two cases that Triller filed, Ethan Klein in H3 and Matthew Space, are both based on basically similar set of facts. They both involve the Jake Paul Ben Askren fight. They both involve bootleg copies of the fight being uploaded to YouTube. The big difference, though, is H3 and Ethan Klein didn't intentionally broadcast that link to that video. It was unlisted. Nobody should have seen it. But unfortunately, they didn't black out the link, and they really should have. So 65 people were smart enough to take that link off the screen, enter it into their browser, and go watch the whole video. So why is this important? Because if Matthew Space, who was defaulted by the court, versus Ethan Klein, who's been fighting this thing, in fact has a motion to dismiss before the court, which is going to be heard in January. I don't have a lot of high hopes because motions to dismiss, I'm not going to get into it, but they're very hard to win. So anyways, but the good news is if the court, the same federal court, said Matthew Space, 300 people viewed that video, it violated Triller's copyright, $49.95 per each of the 300, $15,000 in damages you have to pay Triller. Well, Ethan Klein only had 65 people, and Triller has also admitted that. There's 65 unique viewers. So applying the same logic in what we call precedent. Precedent is like when the court decides something based on a set of facts and circumstances, that then becomes what we call good law, which means if another case with similar circumstances comes along, that court generally will most of the time look at that prior decision and say, well, this is the same situation. That's the decision of the court. we're going to stick with that decision. So in this instance, especially where it's happened just 2 weeks ago, and Ethan Klein's suit for the same thing is still active, what Ethan Klein should be forced to pay Triller, if that's where it goes, is $49.95 times 65 people. Peanuts. And I think I had heard, I watch the HC broadcast sometimes, heard Ethan Klein say he offered like 25 grand to Triller and Ryan Kavanaugh just to make this thing go away. And Triller, of course, was like, no. Well, you know what? Hey, Triller, you screwed yourself because you're not even going to get close to 25 grand out of Ethan Klein. You're going to get 65 people times $49.99. And what that turns out to be is a grand total of $3,246.75. Boy, I'm sure it was really worth this vendetta that Ryan Kavanaugh and Triller have against Ethan Klein. And you're probably aware there are several other lawsuits that we'll talk about later, but I think this is important because this one I think is dead in the water. And if Ethan Klein, and I'm sure he has awesome lawyers, certainly better lawyer than I am. If I were Ethan Klein's lawyers, I would stipulate to the court that the 65 people watched it and that Ethan Klein should be liable for $49.95 times 65 people, just like they were for Matthew Space, and the court should enter judgment for Triller for that amount, that piddly $3,246.75 that I'm sure they paid more to their damn lawyers to go to court over this nonsense than what they could ever possibly hope to get for damages. So, in my opinion, Ryan Kavanaugh and Triller have just been tilting at windmills. This whole thing is a sham. Ethan Klein didn't do anything wrong. He inadvertently exposed the URL link to that unlisted video. 65 people were smart enough to go and enter that URL and go view the video. Really not a lot of damage. You can't even fault Ethan Klein for 65 people, really, because it wasn't really his fault. Yes, he was negligent by not covering up the link, but he didn't broadcast it and say, hey, everybody, go watch this Triller video for free. So, in my opinion, it's been, as Shakespeare would say, much ado about nothing. So, Ethan, I know you're probably not watching my broadcast, but I hope you go and knock the shit out of Triller and win this case. And I hope you put them to shame and publicize the fact that they didn't even get enough to cover their damn legal fees out of this case. And it should be a lesson to anyone who wants to abuse the system just to harass their perceived enemies that watch out, because you might have it come back and karma's going to smack you in the butt. Okay? Anyways, thanks for listening. I hope you were able to tolerate my horrible voice, but I couldn't wait any longer. I'm so sick and tired. I feel fine now, but my damn voice just won't come back. And I don't know why. But anyway, so I'm going to introduce you to another cat in just a second. Thank you. Hey, we're just about to go over 2,000 subscribers. I can't believe how much things have really been moving along. And I know the numbers are still small. I know, but to me, they're big. Okay. And I thank you so much for watching. I thank you all for your support. I am really grateful. I hope we continue to grow. I have 2 more videos that hopefully by the end of the weekend, my voice will be back. I'm going to make, because they're all ready to go. I've done all the research and everything. I'll get those up. Hit the thumbs up, please. Please leave a comment. Please subscribe. And I will see you in the next video. Stay tuned for the cat visit and have a great holiday. Thanks. Okay, my friends, my loyal viewers, this big boy, his name is Gilles. It's a French name, of course. Mais oui, French name for cat, for this cat. Anyways, Gilles is, yes, he's a big cat, and I don't want to hear any hate. Gilles was big when I adopted him. I've talked to my vet. This cat eats like a bird. I kid you not. And he's just a really big cat, okay? But the thing that's special about Gilles, it's so hard for me to tell these stories because, of course, it's a happy ending. But anyway, Gilles belonged to a family that I know there was a child who wrote a letter. It breaks my heart. This kid wrote a letter for whoever adopted this cat, me, telling me how much she loved him and hoped I would take good care of him. What happened to Gilles, I don't blame on the little girl. I blame on her parents. And I don't know if it was financial reasons or what, but in any event, it was unforgivable to me. Gilles had a fractured leg, back leg, and they didn't get it treated. By the time they finally took him to the vet, it was going to cost way too much. The vet, thank God, did not put him to sleep because he's still pretty young. He was very young when I got him, and they had to take his leg off. So Gilles has 3 legs. But he's, believe it or not, he runs up and down stairs. He chases the other cats around. He jumps up on the bed, no problem. I put little kid stairs for him. He gets around just fine. He's not really hindered by it. He's a very sweet cat. He loves attention, and he loves to come lay on me, but he weighs like, I'm gonna put him down. He's heavy. And again, he's he's big, but he's not really like fat so much as he is just massive. So he had his leg taken off. I adopted him. He's a great cat. He's been fine. So that's Gilles. I call him Mr. Gilles. He's a lovable big teddy bear, and he likes to lay on my chest at night when I'm watching TV in bed. And he's so freaking heavy that when I was sick and my lungs were filled up, he wanted to lay on me, and it was like, I felt like he was going to suffocate me. So he'll be glad. Like, I'm pretty good tonight. He'll be glad tonight to be able to come back to bed. But anyways, thank you so much for watching again. I'll introduce you to another cat. I still have quite a few to go. In the next video, have a happy, healthy holiday. Stay safe. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I love you all. Have a great time over the holidays, and I'll see you in the next one.
Pretty please. Subscribe, like, and hit the bell. I get a treat for every new sub. Thank you.